Okay, hello everybody. Today we are chatting with Rebecca Hill from Green & Co Real Estate. Becky is the owner of this real estate agency specialising in acreage and properties in the western suburbs. Becky, you've been working in real estate for a little while now, starting off in the UK. Do you want to tell us about your career so far and how you ended up over here?
Okay, over 25 years, which is scary. That all amounted really quickly. Started off in the UK as a negotiator, which is what most people do over there. Very different setup over here. Most people work for themselves or are contracted. So when I came over here, I came with my son, who was only 5 at the time. So property management was the way to go for me then. And then I've just recently gone back into sales. But the bulk of my Australian experience has been in property management and rentals. And it differs, I guess, over here because in the UK, certainly when I worked in lettings over there, you didn't get that many people actually asking you to manage, whereas property management here is really common. So if you're coming over here and you're renting, you're going to have a lot more dealings with a property manager and very few dealings with the actual owner, because most people have their properties managed as opposed to dealing with people direct.
Yeah, I've even found, I think I had one property that was managed by the owner, but even then the sort of viewings in the open home were done by a property manager that was sent to vet the tenants. When you first moved over, did you rent first of all?
We did, yes. Unfortunately, we didn't use a relocation agent, and we really should have done. We came over and first off lived in a kind of caravan, basically, for the first week, thinking we'll find jobs and we'll be all settled. A week should cover it. We then moved into an apartment on the Gold Coast for a month, and then we did nearly 3 weeks up in Caloundra. So a lot of moving in and out of places, because it did take a little bit longer than we'd anticipated, and because we had absolutely no clue what we were doing and no help. So I didn't come the way that I would now recommend people do it.
Yeah, were you on the Gold Coast and Caloundra because you were thinking about living there, or were you just wanting to have that sort of holiday?
No, there's more furnished property there because our stuff obviously was coming by sea and was going to take at least 3 to 6 months to come all the way over. So we needed to find something furnished initially, and furnished in Brisbane itself is really hard to get and very expensive because it tends to be right in the CBD. Hotels obviously extremely expensive, so it had to be either Airbnb, and we just found that if you went to Gold Coast or Caloundra, because they're holiday places, there's far more furnished accommodation, so it worked out a little bit cheaper for us.
Right, and then you were just driving into the city to look for properties.
Yes, which again wasn't ideal.
And having rented as a tenant and then obviously done it as a property manager, do you feel the rental process has changed at all in that period, or do you feel it was a similar?
I think it's probably similar. I have to say that tenants here are not treated particularly well. I found as a tenant I was very much treated as a second-class citizen, and certainly when I went into property management, I went as far as I could the other way to make sure my tenants felt valued, because just because you're renting doesn't mean there's anything wrong. So that was a bit surprising to me, particularly because customer service levels in the UK, when I was a tenant just before we left the UK, and previously years and years and years before, and I found that we were treated really well by the agents. And then of course you never hear anything generally from the landlords until you're coming towards the end of your tenancy. So it's a very hands-off in the UK. It's far more hands-on here, and some of the agents, they're not bad, but on the whole they're very well. They're totally loyal to the landlord and acting on their behalf. But sometimes that can impact on the customer service side. So
yeah, no, I agree. I think some of the agents that I've came across don't realise that renters may also be landlords or future clients.
absolutely, yeah.
Or who they know, and if you've got a good property manager, you'll be talking to your friends and family about that manager rather than moaning about that property manager. So
Yeah.
I think we both ended up in this industry to change that perception little by little, didn't we?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. So we get a lot of people moving over who've came from owning a property and obviously then renting first up when they first get here, so they've got time to get to know the area and obviously house hunt for a house to buy, and going from that owner occupier to being a tenant again is a little bit daunting, and we get a lot of questions around like just around what the process is and what they should be aware of, like inspections and the level of paperwork that's involved. Do you have any sort of insight on that? Like, as a property manager, what would you have been looking for if you were assessing a tenant application?
Do you know, being really honest, I think any business person likes to deal with people that are easy to deal with. So I mean, totally would do credit checks and all of those kind of things, that any history. But genuinely, I find that the people that were easy to deal with, pleasant, polite, that kind of thing, that goes a really long way. The other key things are just people that are prepared, because the market's mad at the moment, but when the market wasn't mad, it's still fantastic if somebody comes to an inspection and says, here's my application, and they've already got personal reference in there, they've already got, bank statements from the UK. We found that having all of that kind of stuff pre-prepared meant that where we were trying to rent was quite competitive, even 5-6 years ago, and because we had basically all of our ducks in a row, and we'd go to inspections and say, here it is, we found that we managed to get what we wanted pretty quickly. So that kind of thing. They slightly different here. I mentioned credit checks. Actually, they don't do credit checks here. So they'll check you on ticker, which is called the Naughty Tenants Register. And otherwise, it is basically personal references. They'll check your income, but they don't do it with what we're used to in the UK, where they do a proper full-on credit check. Here it is literally last 3 pay slips. If you're coming over and you have a job but you haven't started it, most of the agents will accept a contractor's proof. And again, I rented only for 6 months before we left the UK, and I managed to get a reference from that particular agency, even though it was let only and not fully managed. They gave me a reference knowing that I'd need it when I came over. So, yeah.
Yeah, I've sometimes asked people to just provide even a mortgage statement to show that they're regularly paying something, even though they're not paying rent.
Yeah.
They currently are, just something that shows they're a good payer, they're not in arrears.
Yeah. Yeah, and if they've just sold, or if they've rented their own property out in the UK, that agency will provide proof that they're homeowners, or their conveyancing solicitor will provide details to say they've sold, they're liquid. They'll put in writing how much money you've got in the bank. And over here, you can't pay 6 months in advance, but you can pay in 3-month installments. And again, that can also sometimes be a good way, if you're coming without a job to begin with, prepaying rent is a very good way of making sure that you're, going to be of interest to those landlords still.
Yes, that you've just got that covered if you happen to be delayed on getting a job.
Yeah.
And then once they're in the rental, obviously they have to do the move-in inspection report, which I find is a little bit daunting for some people, because it's sort of your key to getting your bond back, isn't it?
Yeah, very much so. And it's really important that not all property managers do them in the same way, and it is the tenant's responsibility to double check that how something's been described is correct. I've seen over the years so many reports where it's just been ticked as all good condition, and actually the agent hasn't picked up on things that down the line, if you have a change of property manager, you could potentially get blamed for if you didn't make a note of it when you moved in. So yeah, well worth just taking, just before the removalists arrive, if you can, just take half an hour, walk round, photograph anything that you would consider to be damage, not wear and tear, and just make a note of it on that report. Make sure that goes back to the agent within the 3 days, and it's 3 actual days, not working days. So if you move it on a Saturday, make sure you drop it back on the Monday. Basically.
Yeah, that's a key point on the property manager changing as well. I did have a rental once that went through four property managers in the time that the tenants were in that house. So yeah, the fourth person, if good notes haven't been kept or good photographs haven't been kept, then they're not going to have a clue what state the house was in when you first got it. So having those photographs and that report very detailed is key. Yeah, definitely saves you going through any sort of lengthy dispute process with the agent. And then you also get quarterly inspections. I can't remember if that happens in the UK. Does that?
The UK, it's 6 monthly, so twice a year if it's fully managed. And yeah, over here, and it comes around so fast. It's good in some ways because I mean it means you spring clean at least 4 times a year. But it is basically, it's an inspection. The property manager will come basically sort of every 13 weeks. It averages out. And they're coming really just to make sure that there isn't anything that perhaps you haven't reported as a tenant that could be, structural damage or a, maintenance issue. It's also, it sounds really judgy, but it's not kind of seeing how clean you live. But for example, if somebody never vacuums a carpet for an entire 6-month tenancy, you can end up with carpet moth, which then is an issue because you'll have to replace all your carpets and have a pest spray, and it can get really expensive. So it's stuff like that. So if, another example is we're all working from home at the moment, so we're all sitting in our wheelie office chairs. Got one behind me, and in a rental property, it's really important you put a plastic mat under it because you will be held responsible if the carpet gets damaged. So a good property manager will just politely say to a tenant, would you mind just popping a mat under that? And they'll document they've done that. So if you don't do it and then you come to the end of the tenancy and the carpet's wrecked, you will be responsible. So it's little things like that. You do get a few property managers that think it's an excuse to get around with. I mean, I haven't actually seen anybody with white gloves doing the dust thing, but you do get people that will say, oh, they hadn't made their bed. And it's like, well, hang on, you're not there to look at whether someone's made their bed or not. But I do think if you don't know who's coming around to your property that you're renting, just make that effort. In your own head, think it's your mother-in-law coming to visit and the kind of lengths you go to impress her, and then you'll be fine.
Yeah, that's they're definitely not there to check on the cleanliness, but as you say, if it's never clean in all your checks, then you're going to be probably paying a little bit more attention at the checkout to see how clean they've managed to get it when they've finally left. But it's also an opportunity for the tenants to raise little minor repairs that maybe need carried out that they haven't previously noted, because they'll get notified a week or 2 before the inspection to say somebody's coming one day. So they have to give 7 days notice, but most agents will give at least 2 weeks. I would say if there's anything, I know not everybody's going to recognise what maintenance is more important, but minor things, fine, leave those to report on a routine inspection. But anything major, if you see a crack in a wall, if there's a slow leak anywhere, obviously report that ahead. It's really important because, again, as a tenant, part of the tenancy agreement, you are signing to say that you will report stuff and that you're responsible if you don't, basically. So yes, I've personally been stung by that before. We had a tradie who broke a window whilst doing some repairs, and we never noticed, and we got stung for it when we moved out, because nobody had noticed it and we couldn't prove that it was them. So
yeah,
it was a sore lesson to learn at the time. But yeah, you are responsible for that house, and taking care of it. So there is that. I find the actual tenants are pretty well looked after in a sense. So there's very strict rules about who can access and when they can access and how. I mean, you are sort of, what's the terminology about being left to live in peace or something like that?
Quiet enjoyment.
Quiet enjoyment, yeah. So it's I think the tenant is looked after by the legislation, and then the property manager sort of looks after the owner, although they should look after both, ideally.
I think they should. I also think for owners, the better your property manager is at looking after your tenants, the better the entire relationship will be on all sides, because a happy tenant generally is really respectful of the property. And when it comes to the end, and you do have those things that come up on an exit condition report, if the relationship all the way through has been pleasant, happy and good on all sides, it makes negotiating that bit that much easier.
Mm-hmm. So you mentioned the exit condition report, so that's just the flip side of the entry condition report, isn't it, where you just again go through the property and make sure it is as it was when the tenant first moved in, really. And then everything's get checked off, and then you hopefully get your bond back based on the fact you've looked after it. Yeah, and that's it in a nutshell, isn't it? That's the whole, I guess, involvement.
It is. And the tenant, as you said, the tenants are very definitely really well supported here from the law point of view. So as long as you get those key things right, check your entry when you first move in, and then make sure as far as possible that you're handing the property back as it was handed to you. It's all good. And just be aware of the difference between damage and wear and tear. Drawings on the wall is damage. A scuff from furniture is wear and tear. So, yeah. Yeah,
that's a good way to look at it. Well, thank you very much, Beccy. That's been awesome. I loved hearing from you today. You've obviously got a wealth of property management and sales knowledge up your sleeve. So thank you very much for your time.
No problem.